Welcome to Framing the Challenge, creating a design thinking problem statement. In this video, we'll look at framing the problem. We'll look at design thinking and problem solving, the problem space versus the problem statement. How do we create a good problem statement? The difference between the problem space and the solution space. How do we create psychological safety in problem exploration? And different ways that we might be able to explore the problem space. Today's learning outcomes include understanding the concept of problem space and problem statement, understanding the difference between the problem space and the solution space, understanding the importance of exploring the problem space before jumping to solutions, the role of psychological safety in fostering open problem exploration, ability to identify and use strategies for effectively exploring the problem space, and to be able to formulate clear and actionable problem statements. What is a problem? A problem is a challenge, obstacle, or situation that requires a solution, often because it hinders progress toward a desired goal or outcome. Problems arise when there's a gap between the current state and the ideal or intended state. There are many ways to conceptualize problems. Here are just a few. So we've got well-defined versus ill-defined. Is it clear? Do we know the constraints of the specific solutions we're looking for? Or is it all a bit hazy and unclear? Simple versus complex might mean that there's only a few variables. It could be very straightforward, cause and effect, versus complex, where there's many interrelated variables. There might be non-linear relationships that we need to figure out. Convergent versus divergent problems mean that there might be a single correct solution versus multiple possible solutions. And familiar versus novel means that familiar, we've dealt with this before. This is a really common issue, versus novel. It's a completely new, unique situation that we are going to have to approach differently. We need to take our time to frame the problem when we're problem solving. If we rush into solutions, then we may end up addressing the wrong problem and we'll waste time and resources. If we frame too narrowly, then we risk overlooking key factors. If we frame too broadly, then we can dilute the focus, ending up directionless and ineffective. So proper framing ensures that solutions are relevant and impactful. So really want to consider the type of problem that you're facing. How does this shape the way that you're going to frame the problem and your expectations for the outcomes? As you will know by now, design thinking is a structured process that can guide us through solving problems. It encourages creative, user-centered solutions by understanding the needs behind the problem. It emphasizes empathy and collaboration. It allows for continuous testing and refinement, and it means that we can explore multiple ideas. We foster innovation by pushing beyond the obvious or traditional solutions. Here we have our image of the design thinking process. And as you can see, where we have our yellow box in the beginning of empathy and define, this is where we're going to be hanging out today. We are hanging out in the problem space. This is where we try and empathize with the users, the stakeholders, understanding what is actually going on, and then we try and define it. We try and pull it into some kind of problem statement. By clearly understanding the problem space and defining the problem statement, you build a solid foundation for the design process, guiding the creation of effective, human-centered solutions that address user needs, constraints, and long-term goals. There's a slight difference between the problem space and the problem statement. So the problem space is the overall context within which the problem exists. It's the holistic view of where the problem is. We have to look at What are the factors that are contributing to the problem? What are the factors that might be able to help us in dealing with this problem? The problem statement is actually a concise description of the specific issue that needs to be addressed. It clearly articulates the gap between the current state and the desired state, often including key details about who is affected, what the impact is, and why it matters. So why should we actually address this problem? Problem statements are very useful. Firstly, they identify areas for improvement. They ensure that we are focusing on the things that are going to have the most impact. They facilitate communication. They make sure that we are all on the same page when it comes to the problem so that we can work together to find a solution. And finally, they form the foundation for actionable plans. So the way that we set out our problem statements really holds the key for the concrete steps that we're going to take to address the problem. Always the best time to create a problem statement is before jumping to solutions. Specific scenarios include project management, summarizing goals and team coordination, developing products, fixing customer issues, improving user experience, organizational processes, so managing change, research, focusing studies, guiding new ideas, and planning, so spotting market trends and setting long-term goals. Creating a good problem statement, we really need to explore the problem space. We need to take our time and we need to look at it from different angles. Sometimes we get caught up on the things that we can see, which we consider to be the symptoms, rather than the root causes. So we need to go beyond what we can see to find what is truly underlying the problem. We also need to make sure that we take into account diverse perspectives, because sometimes we don't see the problem the same way. Sometimes we experience the problem completely differently, and it's important to take those perspectives into account. It's also important to align your problem statement with objectives and values. So why is this an important problem to solve? Why does it matter? Understanding the problem space is a critical step in problem solving. It involves identifying and understanding the broader context in which the problem exists. We need to gather information on all stakeholders, the environment, and constraints or challenges that may impact potential solutions. It's very easy for us to jump into the solution space before we've spent enough time in the problem space. So the problem space is all about understanding the problem from different perspectives, where the solution space is about creating opportunities to solve the problem or embrace the existing opportunities that might be there for us to capitalize on to solve the problem. Warning, the problem space is often messy, uncomfortable, and complex. It's really common that when we are faced with problems that are confusing or overwhelming, that we want to avoid it. And this might look like staying silent to avoid participating in problem exploration, or it might be the urge to fix it so the problem goes away and jumping into that solution space. Both are avoiding problem exploration. So this is where psychological safety is really key, because people often tend to avoid taking risks that might harm their reputations by remaining silent. It makes them feel safe from exposure. But if you stay silent, then your perspective will never be heard. And maybe there are ideas that are not getting generated because people are concerned about speaking up. Psychological safety can help us sit with the discomfort of the problem space, as it creates an environment that allows team members to feel safe sharing their thoughts, ideas, and concerns without fear of judgment or criticism. Psychological safety allows individuals and teams to speak up without fear of judgment or punishment. It means that they take calculated risks and propose innovative solutions. We can learn from mistakes without blame. We can challenge the status quo constructively. We can collaborate more effectively across hierarchies. And we can embrace diversity of thought and experience. Psychological safety is a tricky one to try and implement because it's not totally tangible. So here are some tips for organizational leadership. Explain the importance of speaking up and the benefits to everyone. Provide specific opportunities for input using structured formats. So make it available for people to bring forward their ideas. Eliminate negative consequences for speaking up. And also model openness. The more that you demonstrate being open with your ideas, the potential of making mistakes, the more others will do the same. Increase positive reinforcement of speaking up by offering reward and recognition, both publicly and privately. Help individuals improve communication skills via training opportunities. Sometimes people just don't know how to voice their thoughts, their opinions, and it can be really helpful to provide them with the tools to do so. Address specific concerns individuals may have. So if people feel unheard, then it's really unlikely that they're going to be speaking up and saying what they need or what they think. Contrary to what we think, verbally speaking up is not the only way that we can hear all perspectives. Research shows that holding silent meetings in certain circumstances can actually better leverage the ideas and perspectives of the team. A silent meeting is a meeting that uses silence to provide time for thoughtful reflection and written feedback before having a verbal discussion. Usually means that people are more likely to equally participate, and it also aims to maximize idea quantity and quality while minimizing social pressures and time constraints. Benefits: encourages participation from all, including introverts. It allows for simultaneous idea expression, it can save time by focusing on popular or high quality ideas, and it promotes inclusive and democratic decision making. So how do we make it work? It's really important to set clear expectations before the meeting. Make sure that everybody knows what is expected of a silent meeting so that they're just prepared for that silent work. Use the silence for brainstorming and ideation tasks. Allocate specific time blocks and make sure that the attendees generate ideas independently. Anonymously is good for social pressures. Use different formats, paper apps, Google Docs, whatever's going to be appropriate for the meeting. And then you can collect the responses and process them in democratic ways. So these are just some examples. You might want to cluster different ideas. You might want to vote on preferences. You might want to display them and have the attendees walk around and view the ideas and then maybe move around what they think is the best ideas. Are you someone who struggles to put forward your ideas? You're not alone. A lot of people feel the same way. But it might be about shifting your mindset. Your input might be crucial to the success of the project. Your idea might spark a breakthrough. Remember, it's all about team collaboration. Small contributions from different angles really help the team to see the bigger picture. Remember, design thinking is an iterative process. Start with an initial problem statement and keep it brief. Use this to navigate and explore the problem space. As new insights arise and you start to understand the problem space better, you can use that knowledge to refine the problem statement. The problem statement can remain flexible until the problem space has been fully explored. Key considerations. Stakeholders. Who is involved and or impacted? When and where? Make sure you map out the time and the place, the context of the problem. Assess the impact. What is the problem size and severity? Current solutions. Is there anything that currently works to manage it? Barriers. Identify obstacles or constraints. Assumptions and biases. Question the preconceived ideas around the problem. And opportunities. Are there any opportunities within the problem space that could be leveraged? There are so many ways that we can think about and approach a problem. If we can consider various strategies and perspectives, we can uncover new and unexpected pathways to solving the problem. Good to have a variety of strategies in the toolbox. Each will have their own strengths, and different problems often require different approaches. So using a combination of strategies will often yield better results. Remember to embrace creativity. Thinking outside the box can lead to innovative solutions. So over the next couple of slides, we're going to show you some strategies that can help you explore the problem space. Just want to say that this is in no means, this is an exhaustive list of all the ways that you can explore the problem space, but hopefully they are some of the most common that you'll come across. Question burst. Sometimes it's better to brainstorm for questions rather than answers. So this idea of a question burst came from an article by Hal Gregerson in the Harvard Business Review. And it's the idea of shifting focus to questions helps us shift our mindset a little bit. It encourages us to explore parts of the problem that we maybe haven't looked at. So it's brainstorming questions for new perspectives or innovative thinking rather than trying to narrow in on immediate solutions. Really opens up the problem space. Let's walk through the process of a question burst. So the first thing we're going to do is set the stage. We're going to choose a meaningful problem, and we're going to invite a couple of people who are not so familiar with it to be able to help us address it from fresh angles. Briefly explain that problem to them in 2 minutes and explain 2 critical rules. Firstly, only questions are allowed. Secondly, no preambles or justifications to frame that question. We get to the brainstorming stage. We're going to spend 4 minutes generating as many questions as possible about the problem. Focus on quantity, and we want to see provocative, surprising questions. Write down all questions verbatim without judgment or discussion, and redirect any solution-focused comments into a question format. Third stage, we're going to identify a quest and commit. So we're going to review the questions, looking for the ones that suggest new ways to approach the problem. We're going to expand on the intriguing questions, and we're going to allow for some follow-up questions to help us reframe that. We're going to choose one new pathway and pursue that to create an action plan of how we might be able to explore potential solutions over the coming days or weeks. Key considerations. We need to make sure that questions are open, short, and simple. We need to make sure that they are descriptive before they are speculative. That means what's working, why, before what if, why not. We need to use divergent thinking techniques, so maybe random associations or alternative perspectives. We want to shift from simple recall questions to those that require creative synthesis. So we're looking for some strange out there, what can make us think about this problem from a different angle. Questions should come from a shared goal. So everybody should be on the same page at trying to solve the problem. And we want to avoid toxic questions that are aggressive, create doubt or fear. You can draw the problem. Drawing is a really excellent creative problem-solving tool because it allows us to visually distill complex ideas. Drawing the problem means that we can see relationships between factors, and it can highlight patterns. Creating a visual representation can clarify the problem and actually help communicate it more easily. You don't have to be an artist in order to draw the problem. Keep in mind these steps. Sketch out the main problem in the middle of the page. Use symbols, icons, labels, whatever you can to identify the key elements. Really prioritize these key elements. We need to make sure that what has the most influence on the problem is represented. Show the relationships by drawing lines and arrows. Incorporate brief annotations so that you can have a little bit of context. Highlight the potential root causes or areas of uncertainty. Try and keep the drawing clear and not overly complex. It's more of a brainstorming activity. Remind yourself of that. Review and revise by sharing with other people. Sometimes having different eyes on the drawing can help you see things that you maybe didn't see before. And just make sure you leave a little bit of space where new thoughts might pop up as the problem evolves. Here is just a simple example. It's just one way that you might want to draw a problem. Here in the middle, we've got the example problem of people not speaking up during virtual meetings. So all of these little icons represent different potential factors, and as they've kind of come up, we've moved them around so that they kind of related to each other. We've drawn some lines to indicate some relationships, and it's just there to help us visualize the problem better. Stakeholder map is another way to draw the problem, but it visually outlines the key individuals or groups that have a stake in a problem or solution. So those who are most impacted or involved. Here we've just done a bullseye map. There are different ways that you can draw the map, but I like the bullseye map because we can place the problem in the middle and then we can place the stakeholders in proximity to the problem to indicate how much they are affected by that problem. You can use color coding or sticky notes. You can move those stakeholder groups around depending on how the problem evolves. There's lots of different ways that you can do it, but visually representing all the people who are impacted makes sure that we don't forget anybody in the process. Drilling down with the 5 whys is a root cause analysis. It's a technique that was developed by the founder of Toyota. It is really helpful for when we think we're seeing a lot of symptoms or surface level problems and we're not quite sure if we're addressing what is truly causing the issue. So if we can come up with an initial problem statement, just a brief one that we can hold lightly, and ask why is that a problem, and drill down each time we answer that problem, hopefully we get to a point where we're really redundant and going around in circles. If we're going around in circles, that's when we know that we've probably hit the root cause of what's going on. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. These are our investigative prompts. This table just provides you with a few examples of how these 5 W and H questions can come up with some really good ways to explore the problem space. So, who is involved? What do we already know about the problem? When did the problem start? Where does the problem occur? Why is the problem important? And how could this problem be solved? It's really helpful for you to come up with your own who, what, when, where, why, how questions based on the context of your problem. Coming up with a table like this can be really helpful, particularly if you make room for being able to answer those questions in the same space. A fishbone diagram, also known as a cause and effect diagram or an Ishikawa diagram. It is about being able to visualize the problem as the head of the fish and then all the spines, the little bones that come off, considered major causes. And along those major causes, we dissect them into minor causes and then maybe even the influences on the minor causes. So it helps us really break down what is going on behind the problem, coming from a lot of different angles. There are a few different ways that we conceptualize the bones and the major causes on the fishbone diagram. The most common are the 6 M's, and that's usually used in manufacturing, methods, materials, machines, manpower, measurement, Mother Nature. 4 P's is the service industry, people, processes, policies, place. Common categories: people, processes, environment, technology, management and leadership, and culture. It's really up to you and the kind of problem that you're working on to use those critical thinking skills and come up with the major causes in a way that makes sense for the problem that you're actually trying to solve. So here is a really simple example based on our example problem of people not speaking up during virtual meetings. So along our spine, we have the major causes of communication skills, psychological safety, meeting structure, leadership and management, and cultural factors. So as you can see along each of those major bones, we've got minor causes coming off the sides. So in terms of communication skills, there might just be a lack of confidence or actual difficulty articulating thoughts. Psychological safety might mean that there's a fear of judgment. There might be a lack of trust among team members. Meeting structure, there might actually just be no opportunities to speak, or there might be a few people who are really dominating the meeting. As you can kind of see as you lay out all of these different causes, they are quite different, but it starts to make sense of them in a more understandable way. Futuring exercises. So these are the what ifs. What if we let the problem continue, and what if we found the ideal solution? So if we let the problem continue unchecked, where would we see the biggest impact? What would be the long-term impact? What are the secondary challenges? On the other hand, what if we found the ideal solution? So let's work backwards from a solution-focused lens. It could identify hidden aspects or critical gaps of the problem that we might be overlooking. And it really helps to stimulate innovative thinking. Creating a good problem statement. I really encourage you to use this checklist to help you come back to all the things that are important to a good problem statement. Have you identified all the stakeholders? Have you gathered information from diverse perspectives? Have you mapped out the time and place context of the problem? Have you assessed the impact? Have you looked at the biases and assumptions? Have you looked underneath the symptoms? Have you identified the root causes? Does the statement emphasize why the problem is important to address? Have you figured out the why? Is the problem statement clear and easy to communicate? And does the problem statement align with the objectives and values? On the flip side, here are the things to avoid when writing a problem statement. Being too vague. We want to have clear details about the issue. Being too complex. We want to try and keep it simple and easy to understand. Avoid overgeneralizations. We need to be really tight around defining the problem. Jumping to conclusions. We just spend a whole lot of time exploring the problem space. We don't want to guess any causes or answers without proof. And using jargon, we need to write in a way that everybody can easily understand. Here is an example problem statement based on our example problem from a little earlier in the slides. Newer team members in the organisation are participating less in virtual meetings due to uncertainty about the value of their contributions and lack of structured opportunity to voice their questions and opinions. Those in leadership have acknowledged that they are unsure how to foster active participation. This issue hinders collaboration, limits diverse input, and may impact team cohesion and the effectiveness of decision-making processes. Addressing this problem is essential to creating an inclusive environment where all voices are heard, valued, regardless of position within the organization. Going through our checklists, we have identified who this impacts. We have identified what, where, and when. We have identified why it is occurring. We have identified the impact. And we've emphasized the importance of solving the problem, and it is aligned with our objectives and values. Key considerations. Invest in understanding the problem. Psychological safety means that we're going to explore the problem space better. There are so many ways that we can explore the problem space. Diverse perspectives matter, and it is often key to innovative thinking. Continue to refine your problem statement and use the checklist. Here are just some additional resources that we have referenced throughout the slides and really recommend checking out if you're interested in learning a bit more. Let's review our learning outcomes. So hopefully by now we know the concepts of problem space and problem statement, know the difference between the problem space and the solution space, understand the importance of exploring the problem space before jumping to solutions, recognize the role of psychological safety in fostering open problem exploration, identify and use strategies for effectively exploring the problem space, and formulate clear and actionable problem statements. Time to reflect on learning. So we know that reflecting on learning is essential for internalizing new ideas and all the things that we've learned. So we've included a reflection activity and a summary of all the slides that we've talked through today. It'll ask you to reflect on how you like to explore problems and form problem statements. Thank you very much for joining us today to discuss framing the challenge, creating a design thinking problem statement. Really hope that it helps you with your design thinking progress.